A low, rolling thunder moved across central Iran as fire lifted above the outskirts of Isfahan and a column of smoke climbed into the night sky. Residents reported sharp detonations in sequence, not one blast but several, each one echoing against industrial buildings and military compounds around the missile base. In the distance, orange flashes cut through the dark for seconds at a time. Roads began to empty, phones lit up. State-linked outlets rushed out fragmentary updates, while regional media circulated footage of secondary explosions tearing through the site. The timing made the scene even more significant. Only hours earlier, President Donald Trump had publicly vowed to intensify operations against Iran, promising that American objectives were nearing completion, while warning of further strikes if no political outcome emerged. Isfahan was not a random location, and this was not a routine battlefield exchange. It was a strike at the center of a wider contest over missiles, deterrence, and the future balance of power in the Middle East. This was not simply a blast at an Iranian base. It was a signal that the conflict had entered a deeper and more dangerous phase. According to President Trump, the United States is now moving into a heavier phase of military pressure designed to complete what he called America's core objectives in Iran. In a televised address, Trump said U.S. forces had delivered decisive battlefield gains over weeks of operations and were systematically dismantling Iran's ability to threaten American interests or project power beyond its borders. According to Reuters, Trump also said the United States would hit Iran extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks if a deal did not materialize. White House officials added that Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks had already dropped by roughly 90%, presenting that decline as proof that the campaign was degrading operational capacity. In that framing, a strike on an IRGC-linked missile facility near Isfahan was not only tactical, it was symbolic. It showed that infrastructure once seen as protected deep inside Iran could still be reached. According to U.S. messaging, the purpose was not merely punishment, it was coercion, deterrence, and a warning to Tehran that delay would bring more damage to key military networks. But the story quickly became far more complicated. Before we break down what Iran says happened next, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest dramatic developments shaping global geopolitics. According to Iranian officials, the campaign has not broken the country's will, and strikes on infrastructure will not force surrender. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said attacks on civilian structures would not compel Iran to submit, while Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has described some of the wider strikes as violations demanding international attention. Iranian sources have also insisted that any serious ceasefire would require guarantees, not temporary pauses shaped by outside pressure. At the same time, the IRGC, according to Reuters, warned that U.S. companies in the region could be targeted in retaliation. How does that pressure work in practical terms? The answer is through layered disruption. A state does not need to destroy every ship or every base to create a crisis. In a narrow waterway like the Strait of Hormuz, even the threat of mines, drones, anti-ship missiles, or swarm boats can drive insurers away, slow convoys, and force commercial traffic to stop. Analysts noted that this is the logic behind Iran's leverage. It mixes military risk with economic pain. According to European officials, even protecting shipping there would require major naval escorts, air cover, and sustained mine clearing. Between these narratives lies a complex reality that analysts are still working to understand. What makes Isfahan so important? The answer is simple: geography, capability, and depth. Isfahan is not just another Iranian city. It sits in central Iran, far from many of the frontier zones usually associated with direct military exchange. A missile base in or near Isfahan matters because central positioning offers storage, dispersal, and relative protection for ballistic systems that can be moved, hidden, and launched with shorter warning times. According to Israeli military statements cited by the BBC, more than 50 ballistic missile targets were struck in a 24-hour period, using more than 140 munitions, including launch sites and storage locations. That gives crucial context to the Isfahan blast. A missile base is more than a warehouse. It is part of a chain. Missiles are stored there, readied there, distributed from there, and integrated into a wider command system linked to the IRGC's deterrence posture. Strike that chain, and the effect is not only physical, it is operational and political. It tells Tehran that protected interior nodes are exposed. It tells regional governments that escalation can now reach deeper into Iran's core security architecture. And it tells energy markets that the confrontation is moving closer to the systems that underpin both military power and global supply confidence. The message was clear. No sanctuary inside Iran could be treated as fully secure. What happens next if Isfahan is only one step in a longer cycle? The answer is escalation by layers. First comes the immediate military reaction. According to the White House, U.S. forces remain prepared to thwart further Iranian attacks, while Trump has openly threatened additional strikes on key targets if diplomacy fails. Iranian authorities, meanwhile, have threatened retaliation against U.S. companies and preserved the ambiguity that makes deterrence unstable. Missiles may fall less often, the pressure can still rise. Then comes the regional response. Gulf governments have watched the conflict spill outward into shipping lanes, refinery security, water systems, and investor confidence. Oman has remained central as a communication channel. Bahrain has pushed for tougher international discussion on protecting transit routes. European officials have acknowledged that no one is eager to place crews directly in the line of fire inside the Strait of Hormuz. That caution matters because it shows how quickly military events at Isfahan can widen into a regional security dilemma. Then the market reaction arrives with full force. Brent crude surged 7.78% to $109.03 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate jumped 11.41% to $111.54. U.S. gasoline climbed above $4 a gallon for the first time in more than 3 years, up about $1.06 or 36% since late February. Oil prices rose, shipping costs climbed, consumer expenses surged. That spike in energy has consequences far beyond the battlefield. It feeds inflation, raises transport costs, and pushes food and industrial prices higher across continents. After that comes diplomacy and international pressure. Britain has hosted talks with around 40 countries on options for reopening Hormuz. The European Union has argued that diplomatic routes, not direct naval confrontation, are the safer way to prevent an energy, fertilizer, and food crisis. Reuters also reported that the IMF, World Bank, and International Energy Agency warned of substantial and highly uneven global effects from the war. Finally comes the domestic political reaction in the United States. Reuters reported that 55% of respondents in one poll said higher gasoline prices had hurt household finances at least somewhat, and 21% said the impact was severe. For Trump and congressional Republicans heading toward midterms, that turns Isfahan from a foreign strike into a domestic political test. Washington maintains that the strike campaign is dismantling Iran's military reach and reducing the threat from its missile and nuclear ambitions. Tehran maintains that attacks on infrastructure will not compel surrender, and that any path to de-escalation must begin with credible guarantees. That is the balance now hanging over Isfahan. One side believes pressure will force strategic retreat. The other believes endurance will outlast shock. In between sits a region already stretched by disrupted shipping, rising oil prices, nervous governments, and a military contest that keeps testing new thresholds without finding a stable endpoint. The blast near Isfahan was therefore not important only because of what exploded. It mattered because of what it revealed. Deeper strike reach, weaker buffers, and a conflict in which every tactical action now carries strategic economic consequences. Will this strike remain an isolated incident, or is it the beginning of something far larger? Stay tuned for further updates as this situation continues to develop. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the latest dramatic geopolitical developments shaping the world.